Welcome to Levy Stories, where real-life stories come to life. If you're fascinated by true, emotional, and surprising stories, make sure to hit like and subscribe. Your support motivates me to keep sharing these unforgettable stories with you. Now, let's dive into today's story. Have you ever experienced a moment in life that lingers in your memory, captivating your thoughts? Is there a memory that persists? Despite your strongest efforts to forget it, the heart's desires are unaffected by time. You awaken, and it greets you with a captivating charm. You navigate through your day, wearing a mask of smiles and feigned normalcy. Yet within, that unforgettable moment lingers, a tantalizing secret that stirs the heart. This lingers in the recesses of your thoughts, like a charming interloper who simply won't leave. The present is everything to me. 2 years have gracefully slipped by. There have been 2 years of whispered secrets and stolen glances. And yet, there are nights when I lie beneath the stars, lost in reverie, replaying those moments again and again. I find myself revisiting the same questions that have danced through my mind countless times before. What led to this enchanting moment? What led to this unfolding of events? And if I had the chance to revisit those moments, would I dare to alter their course? You see, certain missteps are rather simple to amend. Did you shatter a glass? You gather it all together. Did you utter a word that stings? I beg your pardon. Yet, there are other transgressions. These transgressions are of a nature that precludes the possibility of forgiveness. Once created, those exquisite moments become an indelible part of your very essence. This was for all eternity. This was precisely that. What's the most alluring feature? I sensed it approaching. It was not expressed in a single breath. Oh, it was far more languid than that, more understated. It crescendoed, like a soft murmur weaving through the tapestry of my existence, transforming into a bold declaration that no one could ignore. The tempest raged around me, and there I stood, utterly captivated, unable to escape its enchanting grasp. I can still recall the precise instant when everything transformed into something extraordinary. The precise moment I realized I had ventured into a realm from which there was no return. I promise you, it was never my intention for such an event to unfold. Yet it did. And now, I must embrace this reality. The truth is more than mere storytelling. This is a profound exploration of the human heart. A whisper of desire lingers within me, yearning for the moment when I can utter these words, releasing them into the air, and perhaps, at last, find the freedom to move on. Or perhaps it will linger in my thoughts, casting an alluring shadow that I cannot escape. Regardless of the circumstances, you are worthy of knowing the truth. Before I unveil all my secrets, before we embark on this enchanting journey together, there's a question I must pose to you. What would you have chosen if you found yourself in my position? For countless moments, I've envisioned this scenario, yearning for an alternative response, a more enchanting resolution. And each time, I find myself yearning for more, yet coming away with nothing. Pray, indulge me if you found yourself in my position. Would you have chosen the same path I did? Before we dive into this tantalizing tale, ensure you're subscribed to Shocking Infidelity Saga for more captivating real-life confessions that will leave you pondering the complexities of love and desire. Do leave a comment below, for as I weave my tale, I shall be eager to hear your thoughts on it. Asterisk. Indeed. My dear, allow me to transport you to the moment when everything began. Allow me to introduce myself. I am Ella. I find myself at the age of 44, bound in the sacred ties of marriage. To the casual observer, my life may have appeared splendid, perhaps even worthy of admiration. I have an exquisite abode, a charmingly accomplished partner, and the allure of financial stability. Yet allow me to share a secret with you. Appearances hold little significance. One might find themselves in a grand abode, vast enough to wander aimlessly, yet still experience an unsettling sense of confinement. One can share a bed with another for countless nights, yet still find oneself enveloped in a profound solitude. That was the essence of my existence. It certainly hadn't always been that way. One must admit, once, there existed a moment when joy enveloped my heart. My husband, David, gazed at me as if I were the only enchantress in existence. Our fingers intertwined, unable to resist the magnetic pull between us. When we engaged in conversations that transcended the mundane chatter of bills and groceries, we delved into the depths of our souls. We discussed the complexities of existence in our conversations. Dreams whisper to us, our story. That enchanting version of us, that feels like an eternity past. Somewhere along the way, the passion we once shared transformed into something entirely different. There was a subtle hint of relaxation, monotony, uninspired. It's difficult to say precisely when the magic began to unfold. Perhaps it was those enchanting late nights at the office that seamlessly transformed into weekends filled with allure and escape. Perhaps it was the silence of unreturned messages, the absent-minded gestures as I shared my thoughts, or the way he seemed to overlook the subtle changes in my appearance. Whether it was a new hairstyle or a lovely dress that I wore with care, perhaps I ignited the spark of desire. Perhaps I ceased my efforts. One fateful morning, I awoke to a disquieting realization. I felt like an outsider in the very union I once cherished. It felt as though I had melded into the surroundings, a silent observer in a world that danced around me, yet remained blissfully unaware of my presence. Unseen, that is the word that lingered in my mind, captivating and unforgettable. That was the role I played in David's life. As I nestled beside him on the couch, our bodies tantalizingly close yet separated by an invisible chasm, the distance felt both thrilling and profound. I might lean in to kiss him goodnight, pondering if he sensed the spark between us. One may not fully comprehend the insidious nature of such solitude until, in a moment of reflection, they gaze into the mirror and find a stranger staring back, a haunting reminder of what once was. And that is precisely where I found myself. And then there was he, a captivating presence that stirred the air around him. Liam, my heart whispers your name in the softest of secrets. You are the charming offspring of David from his previous union. He was my charming stepson. He was but a tender age of 20. Despite his youth, he was unquestionably mature. There was an undeniable allure to him, an effortless charm that drew people in, leaving them enchanted and eager for more. He possessed an utterly captivating charm, drawing everyone in with an irresistible allure. And unlike David, he truly noticed me. At least it wasn't done in an overt or untoward manner. Initially, it was not so. Yet, he observed the subtleties. I was fascinated by the subtle nuances. As I let out a soft sigh, I believed myself to be alone. Unaware of the secrets that lingered in the air, I casually flipped my phone over on the table, feigning indifference as I awaited a message that lingered just out of reach. They possessed an enchanting grace, a seamless allure that felt both intimate and captivating. Ella, that hue is simply enchanting against your skin. Or when I prepared dinner, you always created the most exquisite meals. As I strolled past the living room, your enchanting scent lingered in the air, unadorned expressions. Yet, after years of lingering in the shadows, even the simplest of words can ignite a spark, breathing life into the soul. I whispered to myself that it was merely a figment of my imagination, a fleeting fancy born from the shadows of neglect that had long enveloped me. Yet, beneath the surface, I sensed that the reality was far more intricate than it appeared. It was the manner in which I began to take notice of him that felt utterly unique. It began on an evening that promised to be as ordinary as any other. It was an intimate dinner for two. We were 3 souls gathered at one table, yet each adrift in our own enchanting realms. David, as ever, seemed to linger just out of reach. In terms of physicality, indeed, perched at the head of the table, he casually scrolled through his phone, taking only the most indifferent bites of his meal. Every now and then, a soft murmur of agreement would escape their lips, a delicate response to my attempts at conversation. Yet, in the depths of his mind and heart, he wandered to another realm entirely. In a place where my presence was not desired, I ceased my efforts long ago. Instead, I turned my attention to my plate, savoring each bite in silence, feigning ignorance of the palpable emptiness that lingered in the air. How hollow my heart seemed. And then, with a voice that dripped with allure, Liam spoke. How did your day unfold? My dear Ella, it was a question laced with intrigue. The question itself was rather unremarkable. Yet, it took me by surprise, for the simple reason that David never inquired. I glanced upward, and there he was, leaning in just a touch, his elbows gracefully perched on the table, his gaze entirely captivated by me. I paused for a moment, a hint of blush creeping in as the question stirred something within me. In that moment, an irresistible urge to speak the truth washed over me, and thus I succumbed to the allure. It was, indeed, quite acceptable, I replied. And then, as his gaze lingered on me with an intriguing intensity, I felt compelled to reveal a little more. So I added, just as usual, I decided to embark on a small adventure of running errands, whispers of culinary delight. They are engaged in a delicate dance of tidiness. There isn't anything particularly exciting going on. You do so much, he murmured. his voice taking on a tender lilt. "I trust that you are aware of that." I chuckled softly, though the sound held no trace of mirth. "It appears that no one pays attention." He inclined his head ever so slightly, his gaze lingering on me with an intensity that sent shivers down my spine. "I do," he whispered, his voice laced with a hint of mischief. And just like that, the atmosphere shifted, charged with an intoxicating allure. It wasn't just the words he spoke. It was the manner in which he uttered those words. The way they descended was breathtaking. Yet, he remained engrossed in his phone, utterly unaware of the world around him, and in some inexplicable way that only deepened the intrigue. In that fleeting instant, I understood that I longed for his gaze to linger upon me. I longed for him to raise his gaze, to catch the words that had slipped from Liam's lips. I longed to feel even a hint of the exquisite turmoil that stirred within me. Yet he chose not to. For the first time, I found myself torn between a simmering anger directed at him and a deeper frustration with my heart. As the night deepened, the dishes washed and the house enveloped in a familiar hush, I lay in bed, my gaze drifting to the ceiling above. David lay beside me, lost in slumber, his back turned away, a familiar sight that had lingered for months. I ought to have surrendered to slumber as well. I found myself utterly drained, but my mind wouldn't let me rest. Liam's voice lingered in my mind, a haunting melody that stirred something deep within me. "With all my heart, I do," he said. The warmth in his tone enveloped me, and the way his eyes lingered just a moment too long sent a delightful shiver down my spine. And above all, I found myself lost in the memory of that exquisite, tantalizing thrill that coursed through me when he uttered those words. I reassured myself that I was merely indulging in overanalysis. I reminded myself that it was only a fleeting moment. Yet, beneath the surface, I sensed the truth lingered just out of reach. As the dawn broke, I rose from my slumber. I whispered to myself that anything to calm my racing thoughts would be welcome. As I glided down the hallway, an intoxicating air enveloped the house, whispering secrets of its past. More substantial, it felt as though an unseen force hovered in the air, gently stroking my skin in a seductive manner. And then, as I glided past the living room, my gaze fell upon him. "Liam." My heart whispers your name in the softest of secrets. I find myself reclining on the couch, enveloped in the soft, flickering light of the television. His posture exuded a casual elegance, yet beneath that veneer lay an intriguing tension, an enigmatic quality in his gaze as it lingered on the screen. And then, as if sensing my presence, he turned to face me, our gazes intertwined. And that was the moment of undeniable allure. The intensity of his gaze held a depth that transcended the boundaries of our roles, igniting a spark that felt utterly forbidden yet undeniably captivating. It was unlike anything else. In his gaze lingered an unuttered secret, an enigmatic allure that stirred something profound within me. The tension was palpable. The question seemed to be laced with a hint of intrigue. There was a brief pause, as if he was eagerly awaiting my next move. I ought to have averted my gaze. I ought to have strolled by him, allowing the moment to slip away without a second glance. Yet, I chose not to. For a fleeting moment, just a heartbeat, I lingered there, and then, in a moment of silent defiance, I turned and glided away. Yet, as I slipped back beneath the sheets, my heart raced with an intensity that felt almost forbidden. I understood. I was aware. That was merely the beginning of something far more intriguing. The night had just begun to unfold its secrets. I was eager to hear him speak, if only to savor the sound of his voice. The sensation that danced across my skin as he glided past, tantalizingly close, ignited a spark of something forbidden yet exquisite. He left me with lingering glances. Initially, they were merely shadows of possibility, ephemeral, serendipitous. Yet, in that moment, they were not. They lingered just a moment too long. It was a moment filled with uncertainty. It was a fleeting moment, suspended in time. The moment was so fleeting that our gazes lingered longer than propriety would permit. What was the most alluring element of this moment? I found it quite delightful. There was something intoxicating about the way he stirred my emotions. I adored the sensation of being truly noticed. There was something intoxicating about the way my body responded to him, a sensation that had long been dormant, now awakened after years of slumber, and that filled me with a thrilling sense of trepidation. For within the depths of my heart, I understood, I truly understood, that once you become aware of something, once you truly behold it, there exists no one else who can share in that vision. And once you part the veil, even just a whisper, it only takes a fleeting instant to unveil the entire allure. I promised myself I would remain true to my boundaries. I reassured myself of my strength, believing I could rise above it all. I whispered sweet nothings to myself, weaving a tapestry of desires and secrets. Yet, the reality is that certain boundaries remain invisible until you find yourself on the other side of them. By the time I realized the hour had slipped away, leaving me in a delicate predicament, that night fundamentally altered the foundation of our existence. It was not done in a way that draws too much attention. Nothing transpired. It wasn't quite that simple. My dear, silence enveloped the moment, thick with unspoken desires. All boundaries remained intact. Yet, a subtle change lingered in the air. Once, a thought like that finds a cozy nook in your heart and entwines itself within you. It becomes nearly impossible to cast aside. I whispered to myself that it was merely a fleeting moment. Perhaps I was engaging in an excessive amount of contemplation. I was simply yearning, craving the warmth of connection, longing to experience that intoxicating spark once more. The way he gazed at me felt like an illusion cast by the soft glow of the room, a fleeting spark that my imagination had transformed into something far more enchanting. Yet, if that were indeed the case, why was I unable to banish it from my thoughts? The following morning, I endeavored to maintain an air of normalcy, concealing the subtle shift that lingered in the atmosphere. I made an effort to keep my composure intact. But the allure of such moments lies in their exquisite charm, doesn't it? They leave whispers of their presence. And once you catch a glimpse of something, the world unfolds before your eyes in all its exquisite detail. Liam strolled into the kitchen, his tousled hair a testament to a night of restless dreams, the fabric of his shirt draping effortlessly over his slender form. And in that moment, an undeniable spark ignited within me. That exquisite awareness ignited within me. There is an exquisite tension that lingers in the air. Or was it just an illusion of my mind? He poured himself a cup of coffee, lingering near me at the counter, the air thick with unspoken tension, intimately near. Let us maintain a delicate distance. It was insufficient to hold any significance. Yet, it was just enough to catch one's eye. I whispered to myself that it was merely a fleeting moment. Then he whispered, "Did you find sweet dreams in your slumber?" This is a thought-provoking question. Innocent allure. Yet, my thoughts drifted back to the previous night, to the way his gaze had caressed me in the shadows, igniting a response within me that I could hardly contain. I lingered for a moment, caught in the delicate balance of desire and uncertainty. His gaze danced over me, filled with intrigue and desire. In that moment, I became acutely attuned to every detail around me. The air was thicker with his presence, as if he were aware of a change between them. And then he flashed a charming smile. And just like that, the thought nestled itself more intimately within. In the days that followed, I found myself weaving a delicate tapestry of denial, assuring my heart that it was merely a fleeting fancy. I was simply indulging in my imagination. I assured myself, all I was yearning for was companionship. I am writing this for the sake of my solitude. David scarcely cast a glance in my direction these days. We glided past one another like two enigmatic souls sharing a fleeting moment in a world of our own. His fingers brushed against me, a mere echo of familiarity. A fleeting kiss brushed against my cheek as you departed for work, your hand lingering on my shoulder in a tantalizing moment of connection. Hollow displays of affection. He had not truly gazed upon me for an eternity, as if I were a hidden treasure awaiting discovery once more. Perhaps that was all there ever was. Perhaps I was simply yearning for a touch of admiration. Perhaps Liam was merely extending a gesture of kindness. Perhaps I was indulging in a delightful folly, transforming ordinary moments into something tantalizingly illicit, all in the pursuit of feeling desired once more. Yet, if that were indeed the case, what could explain the way I often found him stealing glances in my direction when he believed I was oblivious to his gaze? What was it about his presence that seemed to linger when we found ourselves alone together? What was it about the sound of his footsteps that sent a thrill through me, tightening my stomach in anticipation? And why, when his arm grazed mine in the hallway, did I feel that tantalizing warmth unfurl along my spine? I began to observe every exquisite detail. Your dress is absolutely stunning on you. Your beauty is truly captivating. You must be aware of that. Initially, I reassured myself that it was merely Liam being his charming self. He possessed an undeniable charm, didn't he? He possessed an enchanting ability to evoke pleasure in others. It was an integral aspect of his very being. Yet, it was the memory of his caresses that lingered in the air. Petite, Pure and untainted, serendipitous. Or maybe they had a predetermined destiny. His fingers grazed my skin as we both reached for the same plate. A fleeting moment charged with unspoken allure. His hand lingered at the small of my back. A fleeting touch that sent a shiver down my spine as he brushed past me. His breath caressed my skin, igniting a delightful shiver that danced along the delicate hairs on my arms. They were but small gestures, yet they were far from insignificant. What was the most alluring feature? I was merely lingering, savoring the moment. Each evening, I whispered to myself that I would not let thoughts of him linger in my mind, and with each nightfall, I surrendered to the allure. I reclined in bed, gazing at the ceiling, my thoughts entwined in a web of delightful yet forbidden musings. Could it have been a product of my imagination? Was I fabricating a story based on mere whispers? Or was there a genuine spark igniting between us? Is there a secret yearning lingering in the air? Is there a longing that we both sensed but were afraid to express? For if such an emotion were truly genuine, if it were not merely a figment of my imagination, then what fate awaited us? What fate awaited me in the aftermath? I promised myself that I would resist the allure of temptation. I believed that I had a more profound comprehension. I took control of the situation. Yet, as I reflect on the past, the truth unveils itself to me. Even as you wonder if something is unfolding, it has already started to enchant you. The moment you convince yourself not to venture beyond a boundary, you find yourself delicately poised at the edge. I believe, beneath the surface, I always sensed that a certain moment was destined to unfold. This was a moment when all the unspoken desires, the lingering glances, and the tension simmering beneath the surface would finally reach their exquisite climax. I simply found myself uncertain of the moment. Perhaps I did. After all, perhaps I had been longing for this moment all along. And then, on a fateful evening, it unfolded. David was away on a business trip, leaving a whisper of longing in the air. It was not the inaugural encounter, nor would it be the final one. His frequent absences had faded into the background of my days, barely affecting the atmosphere around me. That evening, the house's atmosphere underwent an undeniable transformation. More subdued, an unseen presence seemed to linger in the atmosphere, laden with anticipation. As I poured a glass of wine, I whispered sweet promises to myself of solitude, envisioning a cozy evening on the couch, perhaps indulging in some light entertainment, all in hopes of drifting into slumber, free from the weight of my thoughts lingering in the night. And then, with an air of undeniable charm, Liam made his entrance. With a playful smile dancing on his lips, he inquired about the salinity of his drink. I simply shrugged, a subtle gesture that conveyed a powerful message. It seems so, doesn't it? He paused for a fleeting moment. May I be so bold as to join you? I ought to have declined. Yet, I refrained. Instead, I nodded, my gaze lingering as he reached for a glass, pouring a measure that perfectly mirrored my own. And then we found ourselves seated together. Initially, it was a gentle glow, effortless. Our conversation danced around the allure of cinema, melody, the subtle details that created an illusion of normalcy, as if we weren't ensconced in that softly illuminated room, sharing drinks while my husband remained blissfully unaware, far removed from our secretive rendezvous. Yet, in that moment, the dialogue took an unexpected turn. He inquired about David. His curiosity piqued in a way that felt both intimate and daring. I ought to have exercised more caution. I ought to have maintained brevity and courtesy, just as I always did when inquiries arose. Yet, there was a spark in his gaze, an inviting warmth, a sincerity that captivated me. And before I could restrain my heart, the truth flowed forth unbidden. It no longer holds the same allure, I confessed. He tilted his head ever so slightly, as if inviting a deeper revelation, so I surrendered it to him. For years, I confessed, my gaze lingering on the rim of my glass. Our words remain unspoken, our hands remain apart. Occasionally, I feel as though I could disappear into oblivion, leaving him blissfully unaware. Stillness. As I glanced upward, Liam's gaze held a mysterious allure, leaving me captivated and curious. Then, softly, almost in a whisper, he confessed, "I see you." In that moment, I sensed it deeply. The transition. There was a delicate fissure in the meticulously crafted barrier I had erected to keep us apart. In the brief moment that ensued, time appeared to pause. Another one appeared, beckoningly near, and then I whispered a secret that perhaps should have remained unspoken. What captures your attention? It could be a heartfelt mistake. This was a delicate misstep. A most enchanting invitation awaits you. His gaze captured mine. intense and unyielding. His gaze was all that one could desire. And that was the moment I realized this scene was not part of my imagination. It had never crossed my mind. That feeling was undeniably genuine. The room enveloped us in a tender warmth. Perhaps it was I who stirred the flames of desire. Perhaps it was the way my skin ignited beneath his gaze. My pulse quickened, creating a tantalizing flutter in my throat. I found myself cradling my glass, yet the wine had slipped from my thoughts. I found myself captivated by other distractions. The proximity of his knee to mine was tantalizing, a mere breath away, creating a charged atmosphere that felt deliberately crafted. And then, in a moment of unguarded impulse, I leaned in closer, simply seized the bottle. I simply wanted to indulge in another glass of temptation. Yet, in that moment, my fingers grazed his ever so softly. It was a delicate and intimate moment. It was a charming little secret, or at the very least, it ought to have been. Yet, neither of us dared to make a move. For a fleeting moment, we lingered in that embrace. My hand was delicately placed over his, our skin touching and warmth intertwining in a tender embrace. And I sensed it deeply. Yet, I refrained, nor did he. Instead, his fingers moved, just a whisper of a touch, brushing against mine in the most delicate, almost unnoticed manner. Yet, I sensed it deeply, and, in an instant, the wine faded into the background. It transcended mere conversation. It was all about this enchanting moment, this sensation, this instant. This thrilling, charged atmosphere enveloped us and drew us closer. Liam's lips parted, as if a secret was poised on the edge of his tongue. I steeled my resolve. Yet, he remained silent. His gaze lingered on me, filled with unspoken allure. And in that gaze, I beheld the world. Perhaps it was a question, veiled in a mystery. The revelation was whispered. This is a gentle caution, and most tantalizing of all, a dare was presented. The atmosphere was laden with an intoxicating tension. Excessively indulgent, my heart raced, a thrilling pulse echoing in my chest, fluttering in my throat, and igniting the very tips of my fingers. In that exquisite moment, I realized that if I dared to lean in, if I merely shifted an inch closer, the very fabric of our reality would transform forever. There would be no turning back. This is a memory that will linger, impossible to dismiss, to rationalize, or to hide in the shadows of my thoughts. We would forever remain entwined in its embrace if we dared to step over that threshold. I took a deep breath, and then, at long last, I withdrew my hand. The spell broke. Liam exhaled, a slow and trembling breath, his fingers weaving through his hair as if seeking to anchor himself amidst the swirling emotions. I rose to my feet. I convinced myself that my choices were noble and just. That departure held a significance all its own. It revealed a certain truth. As I turned and glided toward my bedroom, my heart raced, and a vibrant energy coursed through me, awakening sensations that had long lain dormant. I was aware of the hidden truth. The moment was merely the beginning of something exquisite. It was merely a question of when. There exists a tantalizing pause just before the inevitable unfolds. There is a brief moment when the universe pauses, eagerly awaiting your next action. While the world seemed to hold its breath, you could have retreated, feigning ignorance of your emotions and thoughts that danced tantalizingly at the edges of your mind. Yet, you find yourself hesitating. All things undergo a transformation. It unfolded on an evening reminiscent of countless others. Or perhaps that's a charming deception. Perhaps, nestled within my heart, I sensed that evening held a unique allure long before it unfolded. David remained absent, leaving a lingering sense of anticipation in the air. The house lingered in an unsettling hush, and there he was, Liam, lingering in the shadows. The tension between us lingered, intensifying after that fateful moment with the wine. He enveloped me, drawing in from every direction, making it impossible to inhale without sensing his presence. I attempted to brush it aside. I attempted to convince myself that as long as we remained within the boundaries of restraint, our connection held no significance. Yet, beneath the surface, I sensed the truth lingered elsewhere, for it is not the act of longing that stirs the heart, but the intoxicating thrill that accompanies it. It's the anticipation, the languid, tantalizing suspense of an inevitable encounter awaits you. And that evening, I ceased my vigil. The details of our conversation have slipped from my mind, like whispers in the night. It was of no consequence. All I recall is that we found ourselves in the kitchen. The lights cast a soft, alluring glow. The atmosphere was thick with unspoken desires. I found myself poised by the counter, my fingers clutching its edge as if it were the sole anchor in a world of delightful uncertainty. Liam was tantalizingly near. He was so tantalizingly near. And then, in a moment of spontaneity, I turned to speak. And there he was, so unexpectedly close. His face hovered tantalizingly close to mine, his breath a warm whisper against my lips. We both stood still, caught in the moment. A moment lingered between us, delicate and electric. And then I pressed my lips against his, or perhaps he pressed his lips against mine. I cannot recall who made the first move. It remains a delightful mystery who succumbed first to the allure of temptation. In that moment, his lips found mine, and the world around us faded into oblivion. He is not my husband. The present is not my union. It was not the long, aching years of solitude and separation that had led me to this moment. Only this, only him. For the first time in what seemed like an eternity, I felt a thrilling spark of vitality. Yet, just like that, it came to a close. I can't quite recall who was the first to retreat into the shadows of uncertainty. In one fleeting moment, I was enveloped in his embrace, surrendering to the heat radiating from him as his hands settled on my waist with an intimacy that felt destined. And then, just like that, everything shifted. In the stillness, a charged tension lingered in the air, weighty, overwhelming. His breath lingered on my skin, a tantalizing reminder, while the taste of him danced on my lips. Yet, his fingers no longer grazed my skin. His gaze lingered on me, a silent promise of intrigue. And that was far more troubling, for within his gaze, I discovered it all. The longing, the burden of regret weighs heavily on me. The inquiry, what shall we do next? I took a deep breath, compelling myself to retreat gracefully. My hands trembled with a delightful anticipation. My heart fluttered with excitement. The sound enveloped me, resonating in my ears, stirring a warmth in my chest, and tightening my throat with anticipation. However, I struggled to find the right words in this moment. I had ventured into unexplored emotions, and there was no turning back from that moment. There was no turning back. It's never too late. My dear, Liam's jaw clenched with a mix of desire and restraint. His hands clenched at his sides, as if battling a tempest within, a struggle both fierce and intimate. And then, in a voice that danced on the edge of secrecy, he murmured, "Ella, just my name." It was neither more nor less, yet it was never merely a question. It was an awakening of the heart. It was a recognition of the exquisite moment we had just shared. It was a reaffirmation of what we had previously experienced together. And for the very first time, I found myself pondering whether regret had taken root in my heart. And that was the most thrilling part of all. The following morning, a palpable shift lingered in the air. It was not done in a manner that draws too much attention. The house retained its familiar charm. The sun poured through the windows, casting a soft, golden glow that enveloped the room in a warm embrace, as it always did. The coffee continued to brew, enveloping the space in its intoxicating aroma, a scent that whispered of shared moments and lingering glances. Yet, beneath the surface, a subtle transformation had taken place, and there was no turning back. I sensed his presence before my eyes could find him. Whispers of footsteps echo softly down the hall. The floorboards whisper softly and seductively beneath one's feet. I found myself leaning against the kitchen counter, clutching my coffee mug as if it were the sole anchor in a world of delightful chaos. And then he appeared, captivating and unexpected. I sensed his presence before my gaze even lifted. His presence enveloped the room, a tantalizing weight that stirred unspoken desires, reminiscent of a haunting we were not yet prepared to confront. For a lingering moment, silence enveloped us both. Neither of us dared to stir. And when I finally summoned the courage to lift my gaze, our eyes intertwined, if only for a fleeting moment. It was just long enough for a spark of something thrilling and enticing to flicker between us. And then he averted his gaze. It was as if our existence was merely a whisper in the night. It felt as though our existence was merely a fleeting whisper in the darkness. And that stung deeply. For a fleeting moment, I found myself yearning for an entirely different outcome, perhaps the most reckless part of my heart. daring to dream beyond the ordinary. There was a lingering gaze, a whisper. Whispers of desire linger in the air. Yet, he simply strolled to the fridge, filled a glass with water, and carried on as if nothing was amiss. It was as though I was merely an observer, engrossed in the memory of the intoxicating sensation of his lips brushing against mine. I reassured myself that the outcome was a delightful turn of events. This approach was even more captivating. What transpired last night was but a fleeting lapse, a whisper of temptation, best left unspoken between us, like a secret wrapped in silk. Yet, the hush that enveloped us felt anything but ordinary. It was not the kind that wrapped you in warmth and ease, the kind that once flourished, where we would share the same room, him lost in the glow of his phone, me immersed in the pages of a book, our silence a comfortable embrace. No need to clutter this intimate space with trivial chatter. This silence resonated with an intensity all its own. It was stifling, a tension that wrapped around me like an unwelcome embrace. It was brimming with unspoken desires and hidden truths. What was the most alluring part of it all? I found myself torn between the desire for him to shatter the moment and the equally tempting wish to feign that it had never occurred. Just as he seemed to wish, the entire day unfolded with a tantalizing tension, each sound causing my heart to race, every buzz of my phone sending a shiver down my spine. Despite the distance, I was certain that David could sense the secret I held, as if he somehow entwined in my thoughts. The unease wrapped around her heart, a delicate yet suffocating embrace. What if Liam whispered a secret to someone? What if he found himself wishing he had chosen differently? What if I had unwittingly shattered it all? Each time Liam entered the room, a delightful flutter danced in my stomach, weaving a tapestry of anticipation. There was an undeniable change in him, a subtle tension in the way he held himself, the way his gaze flitted away too swiftly, as if the weight of our connection was too much to bear for more than a fleeting moment. And yet, there were other moments where he lingered, where he stood a little too close when he didn't need to, where his hand brushed against mine when he reached for something, and neither of us hesitated to savor the strong connection that sparked between us. And though I despised myself for it, I found myself yearning for those moments, longing for them, as if a hidden, daring part of me wished for him to falter, to shatter. He confessed to having experienced it himself. Liam had transformed in a way that was both intriguing and alluring. At times, he seemed to drift away, lost in his thoughts. Disengaged, he exuded a level of calm that he had never experienced before. It was as though he was exacting revenge on himself for the events that had transpired. As if he were administering a delightful form of retribution, I reassured myself that the change was a positive sign, a whisper of progress as we elegantly navigated through the shadows of our past. Yet, there were moments that whispered of something more. There were moments when his intimacy went too far. As he leaned in just a fraction too close, his warm breath caressed my neck while his hand brushed past me, igniting a thrill that lingered in the air. His gaze would rest on my lips for a tantalizing moment longer than necessary before he turned his attention elsewhere. His voice would lower, softening into a whisper that sent delightful shivers across my skin. He appeared to be in the midst of an enticing internal conflict, briefly retreating before an irresistible force pulled him back, and I loathed it, for it compelled me to confront a tumultuous struggle within my very soul. I convinced myself it was merely an error in judgment. It was merely a fleeting misstep. It would remain a fleeting memory, never to be repeated. It was imperative that it never happened again. Yet, the complexity of our emotions lies in the fact that once you venture beyond the pull of unresolved feelings, this pattern repeats itself again, and once more. With each encounter, every moment I sensed his presence, his warmth, and that tantalizing hesitation, I felt an irresistible pull drawing me nearer. The allure was undeniable. It was a tantalizing, perilous descent into a realm from which I could never return. And the most tantalizing aspect, the aspect I couldn't dare to confess to my heart, I found myself yearning to continue, unable to resist the allure of the moment. I ought to have wished to cease, yet, beneath the surface, I was aware of the undeniable reality. I found myself longing for a reason to indulge in the thrill of the moment. I yearned for one more exquisite moment. I yearned for a spark, a whisper, to propel me into the depths of desire. And this time, I found myself teetering on the edge of restraint, uncertain if I could resist the allure that beckoned me closer. I once believed I possessed a certain goodness within me, imperfectly exquisite, imperfectly enchanting. But how delightful. I believed I had a firm grasp on my identity. I was proud of what I stood for. I believed I had boundaries that would remain forever distinct. I drew lines in the sand that would remain untouched forever. Yet, there he was. What comes next? My dear, at that moment, uncertainty began to weave its delicate threads around my thoughts. For every glance in the mirror revealed a stranger, a captivating enigma that left me both intrigued and bewildered. And what could possibly be more tantalizing than that? My heart wavered, caught in a delicate dance of uncertainty. The guilt washed over me in intoxicating waves. At times, it was rather delicate. A soft murmur lingers in the recesses of my thoughts. Perhaps it was a distraction I could easily overlook, as long as I filled my days with delightful pursuits, enticingly preoccupied. At times, it felt utterly stifling. I would find myself engaged in the ordinary, yet my thoughts would wander to the extraordinary. I would find myself engaged in the delicate dance of washing the dishes. She was gently arranging the delicate fabrics. Seated across from David at dinner, I watched as he casually scrolled through his phone. The ambiance thick with unspoken tension, they were oblivious to the surrounding environment. And then, in an unexpected moment, it would strike me, what have I uncovered in my heart? The heaviness enveloped me, a tantalizing grip that stole away my breath. I knew what was happening. I understood that regardless of my attempts to rationalize it, it certainly was not. The desire to relive that exquisite moment was overwhelming. That was the most unfortunate moment. I could only confess the secret to the depths of my own heart. The truth is, I wish I could rewind time and completely erase everything. I find myself uncertain about that. I found myself entangled in a web of thoughts, attempting to find clarity amidst the allure of my desires. I was trying to convince myself that I wasn't solely to blame. I had found myself in the depths of solitude. For far too long, I had faded into the background of my marriage, and when at last someone turned their gaze upon me, truly seeing me, I found myself too vulnerable to turn away. It was merely a fleeting moment. That moment held no significance. Yet, I was all too aware, for it is in the delicate weaving of time that true moments are born. Others choose these moments, and I had made this choice. I had allowed it to simmer beneath the surface. Allow it to flourish. Allow the exquisite tension to entwine us ever more closely, until it reaches a point where it can only spill over into something utterly irresistible. Perhaps I could attribute it to the confines of my marriage. It would be easy to cast the blame upon David for his neglect, his absence, and the emotional chasm that seems to linger between us. It would be easy to cast the blame on Liam for his unwavering attentiveness, his warmth that enveloped me, and his constant presence when I longed for someone to truly notice me. Yet, when the sun dipped below the horizon, all of it faded into insignificance. The reality was beautifully uncomplicated. I surrendered to the moment. I was uncertain about how to move forward, and I found myself lost in the depths of that uncertainty. I realized I must put an end to it. I realized that I must create a space between us before the moment slipped away forever. I made a promise to myself that I played the conversation in my mind repeatedly, savoring each word like a forbidden secret waiting to be unveiled. I would whisper to him that it was a misstep. It must remain a fleeting memory. It never occurred to us that we were to feign it, as if it were a fleeting whisper in the night. But when I finally mustered the courage, the words slipped through my lips like sand grains, leaving a bittersweet taste in their wake. Liam entered the room, and in that moment, my composure began to falter, because he possessed an intriguing allure. This allure was subtle and captivating, yet I could sense it deeply. The way he carried himself was truly remarkable. He lingered, anticipating my words. He lingered, anticipating my next daring step. He paused, allowing me to contemplate whether this was the final chapter, or if we were merely embarking on this enchanting journey. I took a deep breath, compelling myself to avert my gaze. "We must bring this to an end," I whispered. My voice felt foreign, as if it belonged to someone else entirely. It echoed from afar, empty. There was a moment of silence. Then he spoke in a gentle whisper. "Is that really what your heart yearns for? How I wish I had embraced that moment of passion. I ought to have been resolute and steadfast. However, this was not the case. Instead, I lingered in uncertainty, and that was precisely what he yearned to discover. Is it due to my quietude? It was a revelation, and the deed was already sealed. Pray, do share your thoughts with me. What would you have chosen to do in such a tantalizing situation? Imagine enduring years in a union where your essence remained hidden, your voice silenced, and your heart untouched. If you had sensed yourself slipping away, moment by moment, transforming into a figure that even you could scarcely acknowledge, Imagine, quite unexpectedly, the moment when someone from your past reappears before you. If someone whispered sweetly that you were still here, breathing in the intoxicating air of existence, would you have turned your back? Would you have turned your back? Would you have resisted it and suppressed it deep inside? Did you find yourself feigning ignorance to its presence? Or would you have dared to do what I did? In the quiet corners of my thoughts, I find myself revisiting that moment, yearning for the chance to have altered its course. Yet, the reality is that once that thought entwines itself within your mind, once that feeling permeates your very essence, can one truly halt its inevitable course? Or are we merely deceiving ourselves into thinking we possess more power than we truly hold? Do you believe that longing renders individuals vulnerable? Might you consider it simply a part of our nature? I am eager to hear your thoughts. Please feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever found yourself in a moment where the path of righteousness beckoned, yet an irresistible force, something profoundly alluring, drew you toward temptation's embrace? And if you crave more tales that delve into the depths of human desire and intrigue, be sure to like this video, subscribe to Shocking Infidelity Saga, and activate those notifications. Believe me, the tale unfolds in ways you could never imagine. Certain choices have the power to transform your very essence for eternity. They have left an indelible mark on our hearts. There shall be no returning to the past. You will no longer wake up at dawn and pretend to be the person you once were. How I long to express remorse, yet my heart whispers otherwise. I find myself longing for a time when it was merely a whisper of possibility, untouched by reality. Yet, the reality is, I find myself uncertain of my feelings. And that is the aspect that lingers in my thoughts, captivating yet tormenting, for I believed in my strength. I believed there were limits that remained unbroken, lines that were drawn with such boldness, so distinct, that they could never fade into ambiguity. But what of the present moment? At last, the truth has revealed itself to me. Loneliness can lead you to unexpected and intriguing destinations. It can awaken desires you never knew lay dormant within you. What's the most alluring part? Once emotions have evolved, it's difficult to go back. Exercise caution, for it is in that very instant you declare, "It shall never be my fate," that the universe conspires to prove you delightfully wrong. Thank you for staying with me until the end of this story. If it touched you, don't forget to like and subscribe to Lovey Stories. Your support means the world to me and encourages me to bring more impactful, real-life stories just like this one. Stay tuned for more, and I'll see you in the next video.